So what if the reason a multi-billion-dollar corporate merger just completely falls apart is exactly the same reason a young couple decides to get a divorce?
I mean, yeah, that sounds like a massive leap at first.
Right. But, well, you know the scenario. You look at a couple on their wedding day, and there's this almost universal assumption of like a shared direction.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone thinks they're set.
Yeah, they genuinely love each other. They match on paper. Their lifestyles align. And you just think, they've got this figured out.
But then you fast forward a few years and
Exactly. Fast forward, and without any like massive dramatic betrayal, they have just drifted. They
yeah,
find themselves constantly clashing until the relationship simply breaks down. And it's just this huge modern dilemma. I mean, we are better at matching preferences than ever before, right?
we really are. We have so much data.
So why does genuine initial love so often fail to, translate into a lasting shared direction?
Yeah. Well, that perceived alignment is actually incredibly fragile because it's built on a static snapshot of who those people are in that exact moment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When we talk about navigating modern relationships, especially today where our lifestyles are so uh, hyper segmented, we tend to mistake shared hobbies for an actual shared philosophy of life.
And that very distinction is the springboard for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're looking at a truly fascinating lecture from a philosophical Q&A session.
Right. The one that took place on April 4th, 2026.
Yeah, in Wassound.
Yeah.
An audience member actually brought up this exact problem.
Yeah.
They asked, in a digital age where everyone's tastes are so specific, how do young people who might lack a clear life philosophy find a shared direction for marriage?
So it doesn't just eventually collapse.
Exactly.
Well, the answer given in this lecture is just a radical departure from standard relationship advice.
It really is.
It takes that deeply personal, intimate question about failing marriages and builds a bridge to, like, the historical collapse of traditional matchmaking, and then to the evolution of corporate business structures and even the multidimensional evolution of human emotion.
Which is wild. I mean, we are going all the way from the living room to the boardroom and honestly into the fabric of the universe itself.
We really are.
But let's start with the history because the lecture diagnoses are present by, looking backward. It points out that about 30 years ago, so around the new millennium, high-stakes matchmaking wasn't happening through algorithms,
Right. Or even casual dating.
especially not for prominent, wealthy families.
Finding a partner for a significant household back then was treated as this monumental societal task. Families relied on figures considered to be spiritual leaders.
So we're talking about people in temples, churches.
Exactly. Ascetics or even shamans. The whole idea was to go to these figures and seek profound spiritual and strategic counsel before, tying two major families together.
But the lecture notes that this entire system completely collapsed. Society just stopped relying on those figures.
And the reason is pretty brutal.
Yeah, it is.
They started making terrible matches that were, like, actively ruining households.
Ruining households.
Yeah.
Which is, the exact opposite of their job. So we have to ask why a seemingly robust traditional system failed so spectacularly.
Right. And the argument presented in the source is that these so-called spiritual leaders fundamentally degraded their own roles.
They stopped being visionary guides.
Yes. They devolved into mere fortune tellers instead of deeply analyzing a couple's shared philosophy or their resilience.
Or like their potential to actually grow together.
Exactly. They took the easy way out. They began relying exclusively on traditional astrology, specifically Saju, or the Four Pillars of Destiny.
And they combine that with entirely superficial markers of societal status.
Right. So instead of asking, do these two people have the grit to build a life together? They were basically just looking at star charts and bank accounts.
Okay, let's unpack this because
Yeah.
this is so relatable even today. This is like relying on a dating app algorithm that filters exclusively for someone who makes over six figures and is a Gemini.
Yes, that is the perfect modern equivalent.
It completely ignores whether that person actually has the emotional tools, the patience, or the resilience to support a partner whose, startup is on the brink of collapse.
Or who is going through a major life crisis.
Right. You might look phenomenal on paper, or your families might look like a perfect strategic merger, but you are entirely unequipped for the messy reality of the actual role.
And the lecture gives a highly specific historical example of this. Imagine one of these old matchmakers looking at a prominent corporate family on one side and a highly respected, maybe somewhat aristocratic scholar's family on the other.
Okay.
The matchmaker views this as an elite strategic pairing. The corporate family gets the prestige and stability of the scholar's lineage, right?
And the scholar's family gets financial power. It's a trade.
Exactly. It's
Uh,
an asset swap.
The lecture actually likens this to medieval royalty, marrying off a princess to secure a border. The scholar's daughter is literally treated like a strategic asset being traded.
But the critical failure in that trade-off is the complete neglect of character. These matchmakers just ignored whether the individuals involved had actually equipped themselves with the skills required for the roles they were stepping into.
And the fallout from that lack of preparation is what destroys the partnership.
Always. Let's follow the logic of the lecture's example. So, a young man from a corporate family decides he wants to bypass this traditional system.
Does he find someone on his own?
Right. They hit it off initially, they communicate well, and they get married based on that initial spark.
But because neither of them has actively studied or, equipped themselves for the specific immense pressure of guiding a corporate family, the communication eventually breaks down.
The ripple effect described here is just wild. The text argues that if you're going to be the spouse of a corporate leader, you have to actively study what that life demands.
You can't just wing it.
No, you can't. Because if you don't, the daily stress just causes the relationship to fracture. The spouse can't focus on their role. And because of the turmoil at home, the business itself eventually stalls out.
So the micro-failure in the living room literally halts the macro progress of the enterprise.
Exactly. It forces us to redefine what a partnership actually is.
Entering into an agreement, whether it's a marriage or a corporate merger, based purely on initial affection or superficial traits, is a total trap.
To survive the inevitable pressure, you need a shared direction. And that direction requires a very specific, deep progression of emotional evolution.
And here is where the lecture shifts gears and introduces a fascinating, multi-tiered framework of human experience.
Yeah, this part is incredible.
It's rooted in an ancient scripture called the Jianbogyeon, and it breaks human emotion down into distinct descending dimensions.
Oh.
We aren't just talking about, feeling happy or sad.
No, we are talking about evolving through literal levels of existence. Let's walk through that progression, starting at the baseline.
Okay, lay it on me.
Level 1 in this framework is simply good. The term used in the source is jota. This aligns with yuksang, which roughly translates to an animalistic, purely physical level of survival and gratification.
So in a modern marriage, this is like having money, going to nice restaurants, taking vacations, having fun.
Yes, exactly.
It's the aesthetic of happiness we usually post on social media to prove our lives are going well.
It is the accumulation of comfort. But the lecture issues a very stark warning here. Stopping at good is a dead end.
A total trap.
If a marriage is solely focused on enjoying physical comforts, it hasn't actually evolved past basic survival. Hedonic adaptation basically guarantees that the thrill will fade.
Right.
To actually move forward and find shared direction, you have to graduate to level 2.
Which is joy, right? Or Julgioam.
Yes. And true joy, according to this framework, is only unlocked when you actively benefit others. This taps into the traditional Korean ideal of Hongik Ingen, living to widely benefit humanity.
Wait, I want to push back on this a bit. Are we really saying that a couple having a great time, traveling the world, enjoying their hard-earned money, isn't actually experiencing happiness? That feels like a very rigid definition.
It is a very demanding definition, absolutely. But the framework argues that personal gratification is a closed loop. It's merely good.
It sustains you physically.
Right, but it won't sustain a shared life direction because it completely lacks external purpose.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. It's like playing a massive, incredibly complex, open-world video game. You start out in the first village, you gather a massive pile of gold coins, and you buy the best armor.
And you feel great.
Yeah, you think you've won the whole game. That's level 1. But the game's actual storyline, like the true ending, can only be unlocked if you take that gold and use it to build a thriving, safe community for all the other players on the server.
I love that analogy.
If you just sit on your gold, you haven't even started the real game yet.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. When you start using your position, your wealth, or your partnership to benefit others, the people around you begin to improve.
And witnessing their growth sparks genuine joy within you.
Yes. Now, the lecture takes this a step further. It describes this not just as a psychological shift, but as a literal shift in quantum energy.
Yeah, this part was wild.
Operating in this state of joy generates what it calls a 7th-dimensional energy density.
I have to admit, when I read the source material, the literal energetic physics threw me for a loop. The speaker isn't using this as a metaphor. They are talking about non-material seventh-dimensional physics.
They are very serious about it.
How do we digest that concept without getting lost in the woo-woo?
Well, the most practical way to understand it is as a shift in the density of your social and psychological momentum.
Okay.
When you operate selfishly at level 1, you encounter high friction. People compete with you. They want what you have.
Right.
But when you operate at level 2 and elevate others, those people actively remove obstacles for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
You create a frictionless, high-momentum environment that fundamentally changes what you are capable of achieving. The lecture categorizes this immense, frictionless capability as seventh-dimensional energy.
And from there, you progress to level 3, which is gladness, or GPM. How is gladness different from joy?
Gladness is the multiplier effect. It happens when the people you have directly helped go on to help others.
Ah, so it's treads.
Exactly. You are no longer doing the heavy lifting yourself. You step back. You act as a mentor to the mentors, and witnessing their independent positive impact generates an eighth-dimensional energy.
Which brings us to the ultimate peak of this framework. Level 4, happiness, or Hangbok, the 9th dimension.
Yes. The 9th dimension of happiness is highly conditional. The text explicitly states that true happiness is achieved only when the people below you are thriving.
And critically, when they genuinely respect you for how you've guided them.
Yes, you cannot be happy in isolation according to this text. It is an energy state entirely dependent on earning the deep reverence of a community you have elevated.
So, connecting this back to the couple sitting in their living room, wondering why they are drifting apart.
Right.
It means their marriage won't survive if their only shared goal is like, let's make money and be comfortable. Their shared goal has to evolve into, how do we use our partnership to elevate our community?
That shared outward focus is the only way to reach the 9th dimension and save the relationship.
And this brings us to what I think is the most ambitious leap in the entire lecture.
It's a big one.
The speaker argues that this 9th dimensional happiness doesn't just spontaneously generate in society. It states unequivocally that this evolutionary shift must begin with society's leaders.
Specifically, corporate leaders and CEOs.
Right. The claim is that without these leaders generating this specific energy of happiness and respect, society remains chaotic. And on a macro scale, world peace is literally impossible.
It's a huge claim.
Okay, hold on. We are jumping from trying to stop a husband and wife from arguing over the weekend plans to declaring that corporate CEOs hold the keys to world peace.
I know, it sounds intense.
I need some convincing here. How does a CEO feeling respected mathematically fix a bankrupt supply chain or, calm global tensions? That sounds incredibly idealistic.
It does sound like a massive leap if we only view businesses as profit-generating machines. But the lecture backs this up by analyzing the historical evolution of commerce itself.
Right, the 3 phases.
It breaks it down into 3 distinct phases to show why this evolution is a mechanical necessity, not just idealism.
Let's walk through those phases. Phase 1 is simply merchant or selling. The term is jangsa.
This is the most basic level of commerce.
You have a product, you sell it, you try to make a margin. It correlates perfectly to that level 1 survival mode we talked about earlier.
Yes, the primary goal is just gathering capital. But as merchants gather money, they inevitably gather people and talent. You can't run a massive operation alone.
Right, you have to hire people.
And this gathering forces an evolution into phase 2, which is enterprise or management, geo.
And the mindset here is purely about scaling, efficiency, and growth. You build departments, you optimize logistics.
Up until about 30 years ago, society correctly labeled the people running these structures as managers.
But the core argument of the lecture is that phase 2 is actually dead.
Completely dead.
We are supposed to be operating in phase 3 now, which is called true business, or SEOP. And the definition of true business here completely abandons the idea of profit as the end goal.
It redefines the entire purpose of a corporation. True business, according to the text, is fundamentally about 3 pillars: welfare, true education, and true culture.
So it means taking the massive resources, talent, and capital gathered during the enterprise phase and utilizing them to elevate society.
Exactly.
I'll play devil's advocate again here. Are we really supposed to believe that modern mega corporations are struggling simply because they don't care enough about social welfare?
Well,
I mean, plenty of massive companies are ruthless and highly profitable.
profitable in the short term, perhaps. But the lecture provides a very pragmatic diagnosis of the corporate landscape. It points out that companies today are suffocating under their own weight.
They really are.
They are going bankrupt, or they are forced into endless, desperate mergers. Why? Because they are stuck in the phase two enterprise mindset.
They hit a crisis, and their only solution is to merge and get bigger.
Thinking size will insulate them from failure.
Ah, I see the mechanism now. They keep trying to grow larger without actually changing what they are doing with that size.
Precisely. If a company only gathers resources and extracts value, eventually society resents the hoarding.
Regulations tighten.
The public turns against them, and their own employees burn out from being treated as mere cogs in a growth machine.
The lecture argues that once you have amassed that much power, you must change your function. You cannot just be a larger manager. You have to become a societal benefactor.
The era of management is over, and because so many modern corporations haven't realized this, they are effectively suffocating.
They lack the frictionless momentum of the seventh and ninth dimensions because they aren't earning the respect of the society they operate in.
It is the exact same failure mechanism as the broken marriage. Oh, wow. Yes. The couple that only wants to have fun at level 1 eventually crashes because they lack deep purpose. And the massive corporation that only wants to grow profits in phase 2 eventually suffocates because it lacks societal value.
Both are failing to evolve into the dimension where their existence actually benefits others.
Which leads us to the ultimate question posed by the lecture. If the mechanics of this evolution are so clear,
If we know we need to move from basic survival to ninth dimensional happiness.
and from mere management to true business, why is everyone entirely stuck?
Right. Why are young couples and multinational conglomerates both flailing?
And the source lands an incredibly heavy blow here. The conclusion is that society is suffering from a total vacuum of true spiritual leadership.
The critique is really unsparing. The lecture observes that society currently has plenty of intellectuals and it has plenty of shamans.
Using the term Baksu for those offering mystical comfort.
Right. But it has zero actual spiritual leaders.
We really need to define the distinction there. Why aren't the intellectuals, with all their data and research, or the shamans, with their traditions, enough to guide us?
Because neither group has undertaken the rigorous foundational training required to truly guide people through these dimensional shifts.
Exactly. Intellectuals possess data and historical context, but data alone doesn't inspire a moral shift.
And shamans might offer emotional comfort or, destiny readings like Saju, but they don't understand the complex mechanics of modern society.
Neither of them knows how to sit down with a corporate CEO and teach them the actual step-by-step mechanics of transitioning a ruthless enterprise into a culturally elevating true business.
And critically, neither of them knows how to sit down with a young person preparing for marriage and teach them the specific philosophical skills required to guide their new family.
So it doesn't collapse from the inside out.
Without those highly trained guides, mentors who understand both the spiritual evolution of emotion and the practical mechanics of commerce, society just remains stagnant.
We have leaders and couples trying to solve ninth dimensional problems using level 1 tools.
And they are burning themselves out in the process.
The way this lecture ties the absolute micro to the grand macro is truly elegant.
It really is. It starts with a very relatable image of a couple arguing over their life direction in their living room, zooms out to massive corporate mergers failing in the boardroom.
And diagnoses both as a symptom of a society that has lost its mentors.
It all boils down to a desperate need for guidance on how to stop merely surviving and start actively benefiting humanity.
It's a profound synthesis. It challenges the listener to completely reframe how they view their personal conflicts and their professional ambitions.
They aren't separate spheres of your life. They are identical expressions of your current state of emotional evolution.
Let's take a breath and recap the incredible through line of this deep dive.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. We started by looking at the collapse of traditional matchmaking.
Understanding that when you rely on superficial status or astrology, instead of equipping people for the reality of their societal roles, you inevitably ruin households and stall businesses.
From there, we explored the Cheonbaekgyang framework. We unpacked the danger of getting trapped in the animalistic survival of Yuksang.
And the necessity of climbing up through the 7th dimension of joy by helping others, reaching the 8th dimension of gladness by mentoring.
Right up to the summit, the 9th dimension of happiness, which only exists when you are genuinely respected by a thriving community you helped build.
And we saw how that exact same evolutionary pressure applies to the global economy.
Demanding that leaders abandon the endless, blind growth of the enterprise phase and embrace the welfare, education, and culture of true business.
ultimately culminating in the core warning that without properly trained guides to map out these transitions, our relationships and our institutions will remain painfully stuck in a cycle of friction and breakdown.
Which brings this entire philosophical journey right back to you listening to this deep dive right now.
Exactly. This lecture isn't just an abstract theory about corporate structure or ancient Korean matchmaking traditions.
It is a mirror held directly up to your own life.
Whether you are trying to navigate a complex romantic partnership or you are a manager trying to keep your team from burning out, the framework challenges you to brutally evaluate your current operating level.
Are you stuck in level one, just trying to survive, make a profit, and find some fleeting comfort on the weekends?
Or are you actively equipping yourself with the philosophical resilience required to benefit the people around you?
Because when a marriage drifts or a company suffocates, the breakdown is rarely a sudden explosion. It is a slow, invisible failure to evolve.
So true.
So as you go about the rest of your day, let this lingering thought from the lecture mull in your mind. True, ninth dimensional happiness is highly conditional.
It is only unlocked when the people around you genuinely revere you because of how much you have helped them grow.
Look at the people you manage at work, or the partner sitting across from you at dinner. Are you actively creating an environment where they can reach their highest potential? Or are you just managing the relationship like a phase two enterprise, desperately hoping for growth without ever changing your direction?